Shrinvantu Vishwe Amritasya Putraha Ayedamani Divyani Tastu Vedam Etam Purusham Mahantam Aditya Varnam Tamasa Parastat Tvameva Viditva Atimrityureti Nanya Panta Vidyate Yanaya Uttishtata Jagrata Prapyavarani Bodhata Uttishtata Jagrata Prapyavarani Bodhata. Hear ye, children of immortal bliss, even ye that reside in higher spheres. I have found the Ancient One who is beyond all darkness, all delusion. Knowing him alone, you shall be saved from death. There is no other way. Arise, awake, and stop not till the goal is reached. Arise, awake, and stop not till the goal is reached. So, have you ever wondered what you're doing here? Why did I come anyway? Sometimes we do wonder, we all wonder. Are we making good use of our lives? We hear that 3 things are necessary: having a human body, desire for liberation, and grace of an illumined soul. These are the great blessings. Are we using our potentials, the blessings we've been given in life? Or are we just living our lives in a kind of a sleep mode? Sometimes we feel we don't really belong here at all, that we're just serving time, as it were. Why did we take a body? Why are we here? And I'm glad to say we're not alone in this feeling. Swami Yogananda felt this way from a very early age. When he was a child of just 5 years old, he would also often be overwhelmed with spiritual feelings. In the midst of play, he would become serious, and he'd lose all interest in whatever sport it was. He would withdraw to a quiet corner and, looking at the sky, ask himself, "Where am I? Certainly I don't belong here. These are not my playmates. I have other friends and companions. I must have come from one of those faraway stars. But which one? I don't know. Why am I here if I belong to another world? Is this all a dream?" Thoughts like these would trouble him, and he would be seized with a longing for a familiar region. We feel we don't belong here, but we don't know the way out. Why have we come? Why have we taken a human birth? We long to go home. Listen to another song. "Oh, my mind, let us go back to our own abode. Here in this world of endless change, why should we wander foreign and strange? Objects of sense, material things, these are not really yours, O mind. Let us forsake what's not our own. True inheritance we must find. O my mind, let us ascend the path of truth. Climb without fear, though dark the night. Take discernment, a torch of light. Truth from falsehood will be revealed. Long is the road, the end far above, but we grow stronger with each step, nourished by pure and selfless love. O my mind, let us conceal our provisions well. Greed and pride like bandits lie, waiting for pilgrims passing by, eager to rob each virtue gained from the unprotected soul. Thus take for guards along the way watchfulness and self-control. O my mind, let us abide with holy men. Here is a wayside resting place where weary travelers are granted grace. But should we stumble, lose our way, should the torch we hold grow dim, call to the Lord with all your strength. Even death must bow to him. O my mind, let us go back to our own abode. The Maharaja of Khetri once asked Swami Vivekananda, what is life? And Swamiji answered, life is the unfoldment and fulfillment of a being under circumstances tending to press it down. We all are struggling here. Each person's life experiences and spiritual experiences are unique. The world is vast, and it's full of many experiences, like this Cosmos song implies. It is what Ramakrishna meant when he said, as many minds, so many paths. He could see that we each have our own path. Swami Vivekananda says, no man is born to any religion. He has a religion of his own in his own soul. Each life has a current running through it, and this current will eventually take it to God. Everyone has his own path, a living, dynamic process of transformation of consciousness. Everyone is different, and so everyone's path is different. It's something to be sought within himself through inner struggle and experience. Direct experience of God is a result of the blossoming of intuition, and it's not easily attained. Swami Brahmananda says that behind the mind is a subtle, more spiritual mind, and with the development of contemplation, prayer, and other spiritual practices, a new vision opens up, and the aspirant realizes many spiritual truths. The light of the Atman, the light of intuition coming through the buddhi, reveals the true nature of objects. It provides direct experience or yogic perception to the soul. It's the most important thing that you find your own path. When you find your path, you have nothing to do but fold your arms and the tide will carry you to freedom. Therefore, when you find it, enter the current, your path, and never swerve from it. Your way is the best for you. Spiritual experiences are different due to the different levels of consciousness at which we experience things. Human levels of consciousness correspond to the outside cosmic levels. When we're at a particular level of consciousness within, we open ourselves to the corresponding cosmic level outside. When our inner level changes, whole new worlds of experience open up for us. We also see the world through the screen of our own minds, and all of our normal waking state and dream experiences are clothed in symbols. These influence the spiritual experiences we open ourselves up to. The whole world is full of symbols. However, symbols, especially spiritual ones, point to a reality beyond them, just as the sun is often worshipped. There is a reality behind the sun that is being actually worshipped. These different forms correspond to aspects of transcendental reality. These influence how our path will appear before us and the particular form that it's going to take. True spiritual experience is the result of at least a partial awakening of the sushumna, through which energy arises to the brain. When by the power of long internal meditation, the vast mass of energy stored up travels along this channel, it causes a reaction and is much superior to the reaction of a dream or imagination or of sense experience. It is supersensuous experience. When it reaches the brain, the result is the full light of illumination, the perception of the self. Hinduism places before man two modes of life. One is known as the Pravrajika Marga or Dharma, which aims at worldly enjoyment, bhoga, and material prosperity. The other is Nivritti Dharma, which aims at liberation or moksha, the highest good. Manu says Pravrajika Marga is natural to all human beings, but Nivritti leads to liberation. Work itself is of two types, work with attachment and work with detachment. The former is Pravriti, the latter Nivritti. The former is with desire, Pravriti, going outward. The latter without desire or Nivritti is going inward. The former is not only meant for monks, it is also meant for anyone who wants to realize God, but who cannot formally renounce worldly ties and obligations. The chief aim of Nivritti Dharma is to give up the desire for enjoyment and convert all activities into a means of liberation. Those who seek liberation are all followers of this Dharma, whether they're monks or householders, whether they lead contemplative or active lives. All spiritual disciplines like meditation, japa, self-analysis, done with this aim, belong to this Dharma. Also, nishkama karma, or work done without any selfish desire, leads to liberation. These can all be done whether one is a householder or a monk. All those who seek worldly enjoyment belong to the realm of pravriti, even if they have faith in God and practice prayer and worship. Meditation or yoga done for the sake of relaxation or physical health, or service rendered with the idea of getting name and fame, all these belong to the Pravriti Marga. Nivritti Dharma is only concerned with liberation, becoming free. And mumukshutva, the burning desire for liberation, is the driving force. There are four goals in human life: kama, desire; artha, wealth; dharma, righteousness; and moksha, liberation. The effort to attain fulfillment by way of kama, artha, and dharma, trivarga, it's called, is restricted to the body and the mind. When a man realizes the futility of this effort, he begins to seek for the spiritual path beyond body and mind, and then he attains to true spiritual aspiration, an intense desire for freedom, freedom to attain the truth within himself, total and everlasting freedom from all miseries and struggles is known as moksha, and it is mumukshutva, the desire for this, that is really considered to be the only legitimate desire to hold on to. It's not even considered a desire at all. The first great change that turns a person from a worldly life to spiritual life is the dawn of a new faith in him, faith in an ultimate spiritual solution to the problems of life. Spiritual life begins only when this belief gets energized into a dynamic faith in the possibilities of the soul and becomes a conscious motivation to attain the ultimate spiritual goal. Faith is dynamic and should be total. It's a thing which turns the will toward the ultimate goal. When the will is freed from worldly pursuits and directed to the goal, it becomes true faith. Vyasa calls Shraddha, faith, the mind's clear view of the goal. The Gita says a person's nature is made up of his faith. As is his faith, so is he. Nachiketa received faith when he saw his father giving away worthless cows as gifts. The Upanishad, the Katha Upanishad, says that at that moment, faith entered into the boy. And when that faith got released from its limitations and directed to the ultimate goal of life, it allowed him to renounce the world and even to confront death. The faith gave him the strength to go forward. The goal of life is to realize the reality represented by the ideal. That is to convert the ideal into direct experience. Often when one first meets one's guru, This is when real faith is first awakened in the heart. You think, oh yes, here is someone who has realized this is possible for me too. There are considered to be 4 ashramas, or stages in life for a person, according to Hinduism. As a person goes through life, they can progress through all these 4 stages. In fact, in some of the different branches of Hinduism, it's thought that every individual must experience all 4 ashramas in order to be complete. Others do not teach this. The first ashram is brahmacharya, the celibate student. This is a period of formal education and lasts till about the age of 25, during which the young person leaves home to stay with a guru or teacher to attain both spiritual and practical knowledge. This is student life. We also experience that here. During this period, he's called a brahmachari and is prepared for his future profession as well as his family and social and religious life, which is ahead. The second stage is the grihastha, the married family life, or the householder. This period begins when a person gets married and undertakes the responsibility for having and supporting a family. At this stage, Hinduism supports the pursuit of wealth, artha, as necessary, and indulgence in sexual pleasure, kama, under certain defined social and cosmic norms in a chaste and faithful marriage is practiced. This ashram lasts until around the age of 50, and according to the laws of Manu, when a person's skin wrinkles and his hair turns gray, he should go into the forest. Many of us should be living there now. However, in real life, for most grihastas, the stage lasts a lifetime. It's very easy to just stay in this stage. Actually, a person can stay in this ashram and still progress spiritually. It's one of the reasons I feel that Sri Ramakrishna was married. Although his marriage was a completely spiritual one in every way, the fact that he remained married points out the way for the householder devotee. He had many disciples who were married, and he taught that a person who is married can be a devotee and can in fact realize God. He can practice the Nivritti Marga that leads to liberation. The third ashram is the Vanaprastha, the hermit in the retreat. At this stage, a man begins his duty after his duty as the householder has come to an end. He's become a father, a grandfather, and everyone has established their own lives, and they're separate from him. At this stage, he should renounce all physical, material, and sexual pleasures and retire from social and professional life, leave his home, and go live in a forest retreat, spending his time in prayers. He's allowed to take his wife along, but it's supposed to remain as little contact as possible with the family. The final or the fourth stage is sannyasa, the wandering recluse. At this stage, a man is supposed to be totally devoted to God. He's a sannyasi. He has no home, no other attachment. He's renounced all desires, fears, hopes, duties, and responsibility. He is virtually merged with God, and his worldly ties are broken. His sole concern becomes attaining moksha, for the release from the circle of birth and death. Suffice it to say, very few can live up to this stage. How many monks are there who consider their ashram to be their home? For many, they progress from one ashram to another until they reach the stage of renunciation. For others, they may stop at one of these ashramas, but God can be realized in any one. Swami Vivekananda wrote a beautiful essay called "Each is Great in His Own Place." There he points out that the path of each ashram is different, but each path is great in its own way. Each path leads a person toward God if the person is a spiritual aspirant. A spiritual aspirant may remain in the world and be busy with secular activities, but he has to have a clear understanding of his relationship with the world, and he should never forget his goal. How does a person know he has a real spiritual goal in his mind? First, his aspiration for the goal must be intense. He must really want God realization, this burning desire for God. He must also feel that his emotions and reasoning are united and that he's connecting all his actions and his experiences to his goal. He must have endurance. He has to be able to hang on when things get tough. And as the goal dominates his thoughts and transforms his life more and more, he should feel an intense joy and satisfaction in striving. Then, as difficulties come, he will automatically turn toward the goal. He always will seek the spiritual solution. God, the goal, more and more means everything to him, and other pursuits will fall away from him naturally. Struggle is the force behind all biological evolution, the survival of the fittest, and Swamiji says it is this which makes all life sacred. When the struggle for mere existence at bodily level is met, then it transforms to the mental level, and the ego constantly is struggling for recognition. People search for success in many fields, and according to Indian thought, spiritual life is a disciplined search for even higher realms of consciousness. This, according to Swamiji, is the reason for religion. Religion is the struggle to transcend the senses and takes place by turning away from the mere struggle for existence and turning toward the transformation of consciousness and the expansion of consciousness. When we remain engrossed in the struggle of existence for the body or the ego, our religious life is still partial. When we realize the futility of this struggle, we turn away from it. Some people have what is called a conversion, a sudden feeling that they're under the control of a new power, which turns their souls toward God. Tulsidas, the great mystic and saint, had such a conversion. And St. Paul also was struck down on the road to Damascus with a vision and had this type of conversion. Other people will turn more slowly. They may first turn to art or science or social service. And this in turn changes their awareness so that they will seek something higher. Usually, however, they're not freed from the existence of ego until they really seek for a spiritual solution. Life is constantly changing both our bodies and our minds. The ego is a projection of the Atman into the stream of existence. According to Ramakrishna, the ego itself is Maya. Ego reduction must be accompanied by self-sacrifice, and self-sacrifice is impossible without love and compassion. All that is really necessary is to live in harmony with cosmic life and its universal laws. So why did we come here? We came to strive spiritually to realize God, as it were, in this life or in another life soon to come. In order to strive successfully for God realization, we have to first have a clear idea of the whole reality of which we are a part. The aspirant must be able to relate himself meaningfully to the world around him and to the highest spiritual principle called God. He has to understand who he himself is, and he must also understand the universe and God. Jiva, Jagat, Ishvara constitute the triangle of reality known as tattva, reality. Since the aspirant can have only a conceptual knowledge of it at first, it is termed the ideal. This is what our ideal is. The goal of life is to realize the reality which is represented by this ideal. That is, to convert the ideal into direct experience. A beginner in spiritual life finds the center of his awareness, his I continuously moving among various levels. But gradually, through introspection, he learns two facts. One is that there's actually only one true center of awareness, and that what is changing is not the center, but the focus of his consciousness outside. He has to change the focus of consciousness. It may be focused inwardly or outwardly. One may feel one's center of consciousness in the heart. The focusing of consciousness is an act of will. When the focus is shifted to higher planes, then desires and worries lose their reality. First, one has to understand the difference between the center of his consciousness and its focus. He should find the true spiritual center and keep the focus of his consciousness as near to it as possible. This is called centering by some religious gurus. The Upanishads describe the self as man as having several koshas or levels, different levels. At each level, a man's understanding of reality changes. The three lower levels relate to the physical body, vital functions, and the mind. For most people, life is restricted to these levels. The higher levels belong to the spiritual level. The beginner in spiritual life finds his awareness continually moving among all these different levels. But gradually he learns that there's only one true center of awareness, and that what is changing is not the center, but the focus of consciousness. That center where the consciousness is focused becomes real to him. When the focus is shifted to the higher planes, to thoughts of God, then all these desires and worries of the lower plane will lose their reality. As the ego is reduced, it must be accompanied by a spirit of sacrifice. Sometimes the ego can masquerade as strength. Swamiji, who greatly valued strength, gave even a greater emphasis to self-sacrifice, not self-assertion. He said these are the laws of the highest universe. Self-sacrifice is impossible without love and compassion. A person has to have a hero's will and a mother's heart, he says. A spiritual aspirant must be realistic about where he is. He has to remain aware of himself. He can't forget himself. He has to see his own actions and thoughts, and he has to be aware of his own mind, of what he's doing. He has to remain alert and watchful. Self-analysis is extremely necessary. The spiritual man seeks something eternal and timeless, a union with the spiritual reality that leads to the fulfillment. Discrimination, devotion, detachment, all show that he's turning away from the mere struggle for existence. And this turning away, as we've already discussed, nivritti, is the first step for a man. But his consciousness itself has to be transformed. The nature of the struggle becomes more subtle, and as it becomes subtler, one progresses. Shankara says, the first step to liberation is the extreme aversion to all perishable things. Then follows calmness, sama, self-control, dhamma, forbearance, titiksha, and the utter relinquishment of all work done for reward or thought of going to heaven. The nature of our I consciousness determines how we view ourselves and how we view our universe. Some identify more with the body, others with the mind. We may identify ourselves with the bhokta or the enjoyer. The bhokta appropriates experiences to itself. We feel, I'm happy, I'm sad. This is the realm of attachment, raga and aversion, dvesha. Or we may identify with the karta, the doer. This self says, I did this, I did that. It appropriates all action and it binds itself. The jnata, the real self which knows all experiences and actions. It does not enjoy nor does it do. It does not suffer, nor is it bound. It simply exists and it knows. It is the Sakshi, the witnessing self. It reveals the true spiritual center within us. The I, or the ego, is only a reflection or shadow of this true self, or Atman. We see ourselves as luminous spirits. Our whole concept of God and reality will change. We need to realize our own reality first, have this self-awareness. Ramanuja even says this is the first step in bhakti yoga. The true spiritual heart is not known to all. It has to be awakened. Most aspirants succeed in concentrating only on the emotional heart. Devotional exercises like prayer and worship activate the emotional heart, and then gradually will awaken the spiritual heart. In the path of knowledge, the aspirant goes directly to the spiritual heart through self-analysis. The true spiritual heart is beyond emotions. It's the center of meditation. First, we discover the inner space in the heart, and then we discover this center. We also become aware of two I's in us, a lower self, or the ego, the unripe I, and the higher self. These are the two birds that are said to be sitting on the same tree. We become aware of the light of intuition, or the prajna consciousness, which makes the object of meditation luminous within the heart. The higher forms of struggle take place in the depths of the heart. Prayer can also awaken this center. The center of the heart awakes and takes control of the vital life of the person. With the awakening of the higher center of consciousness, one's thoughts get drawn inward and the mind itself becomes interior. The psychic energy flows freely toward a spiritual center. We become aware of the self, and self-remembrance becomes spontaneous. We can listen internally, and it is easier to do while repeating a mantra mentally. It is through the heart that the higher intuitive faculty called buddhi comes forth. This is the subtle intellect which dwells in the heart according to the Upanishads. The individual spirit longs for the supreme, and the consciousness itself expands. The modes of expansion of consciousness and the resulting spiritual experiences are not the same for all people. In Christian thought, the mystic experience something called infused contemplation, which is a gift of God and is utterly beyond any human effort. Since existence, consciousness, and joy are inseparable aspects of one and the same reality, the more the consciousness expands, the vaster becomes one's sense of existence and one's experience of bliss. The famous Gayatri Mantra is sometimes given to invoke our power of intuition and to awaken our Dhi, or buddhi, the power of right understanding which lies within us. This mantra helps one to find one's own yoga, his own path in the depths of his consciousness. It is a potent tool for a spiritual aspirant. According to Shankara, the light of the Atman is reflected through the buddhi, the manas, the senses, and even the body. In ordinary life, this inner light is all projected outward. It is with this light that we see the objects of the external world. We want to realize the Atman, or God, so we have to turn this light inward, look inward. First, the senses are to be turned inward. Then the manas, mind, has to be turned inward by focusing it in the heart. When the heart holds the mind steady, the image of the deity becomes living, and other thoughts are stilled. When the buddhi, the will, is focused inward, the door of the inner heart opens, and the light of the Atman shines through. Swami Sardananda describes the nature of the aspirant's mind engaged in spiritual struggle. What exists there are only the aspirant's mind and the infinite currents of its impressions of past lives. We can see this when we try to meditate. In that realm, there exists the attraction toward higher ideals, leading the aspirant on to the ultimate goal. Attractions produced by his constantly coming in conflict with certain external things and persons. There exists his endless, unflinching struggle against his adverse impressions in order to make the mind fix itself exclusively on those ideals leading to the goal. There exists a resolute attempt at diving deeper into one's own personality by turning the mind away from the exterior objects and withdrawing it within. Spiritual practice becomes real to us only when it is within our capacity to practice. Prayer, worship, internal or external, remembrance of God, self-surrender to Him, self-analysis, self-inquiry, serving holy people. These are all the techniques that can be practiced. Karma yoga is also a spiritual discipline which purifies the mind and can reduce egoism. One of the Christian saints gives this advice: attention should be linked with prayer as inseparably as body is linked to soul. If attention should find any evil thoughts, then prayer should be applied to destroy them. St. Francis de Sales says, as soon as you're aware of any thought which is taking you away from God, you should become like a little child and run to the arms of your parent or cry aloud for their help. Similarly, turn to God in earnest when overcome by evil thoughts and pray for His mercy and help. Don't lose courage as you progress. These lower tendencies will become less. These are different techniques that are given. Man needs a great power of discernment to discriminate rightly between good and evil, to know what should or should not be done. The Katha Upanishad tells us we have to distinguish between the good and the pleasant, Shreyas and Preyas. He says both will present themselves to a man, and we should choose the good. Vyasa says, the river of the mind flows in two opposite directions, toward virtue and toward liberation, toward vice and bondage. Through dispassion, the channel up to sense objects is to be closed, and through intelligent effort, the channel to spiritual knowledge is to be opened. A spiritual discipline must be practiced with intensity and tenacity. Every spiritual aspirant has to hold on to one main path, and yearning for God is the primary force in all sadhana. The mind has to be constantly turned toward this highest goal. There's a saying among Vaishnavas, three, namely the spiritual seeker, the chosen ideal, and the devotees are kind indeed, but not having the kindness of one, a man has verily been sent to rack and ruin. Here the one means one's own mind. Verily the mind, O Krishna, is restless, turbulent, strong, and unyielding. I regard it quite as hard to achieve its control as that of the wind. But through practice and renunciation, O son of Kunti, it may be governed. One must have the grace of one's own mind. The Gita tells us that your mind can be your enemy, but it can also become your friend and help you if you train it. The Upanishads say, the path to the highest truth is as difficult to tread as the edge of a razor. It demands self-sacrifice and self-effort. Owing to ignorance, a man forgets his divine nature and regards himself as a separate, limited entity, the ego. It is this separation from universal life that produces the illusion of non-being and the consequent fear which comes from the sense of duality. Egoism is the root cause of all human misery, and final and complete solution to the problems of life can be found only transcending the ego. You can't solve these problems through ordinary means, but you can go beyond them. Transcendence is possible only through the transformation of consciousness. The discipline by which consciousness is transformed is known as yoga or sadhana. When the mind is purified and concentrated, its movements will become harmonious, silent, and powerful. Yoga involves two basic processes, purification and concentration. As we've already said, everyone has his or her own yoga. At first, this process of transformation is restricted to only certain parts of your personality, and it may be done just at certain times. You may have a time when you meditate or do your spiritual practices. But through practice, the transformation involves the whole personality, and it will go on all the time. To convert one's whole life into yoga is the spiritual solution to all those life's problems. And this is based on self-effort and faith in one's own higher self. Swamiji tells us, Atman is the source of all power and perfection we can call forth. It is the inner strength in a person, and yoga means depending on the spirit alone and not matter, finding the solutions inside instead of in the material world outside. Yoga aims to transcend the ego. This is why we came here, and this is why we took a human body. Now we're trying to go back to the place from which we came, to go back to our divine nature, to go back to God. I'll end with that. Thank you so much.